This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Anahita TV. I'm so excited to have you with me. Today, I have a wonderful guest who's waiting in the green room. He's going to be with us in a second. I just wanted to do a little introduction before I bring him on. Wow, I don't know where to begin. He's done so much. We're just going to stick to some of the most recent accomplishments. Doc James Mason is the author of the acclaimed book, Mastering the Logline, available on Amazon. And he is a regular columnist for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, where he shares his insights on storytelling. So if you're a storyteller, this is the show for you. His latest article on describing the goal has just been released. He has over 2 decades of experience as an advertising executive for major clients like Old Navy, S.C. Johnson, and Princess Cruises and whatnot. So I'm going to leave the rest. Let's bring him in, and I'll do the rest of the intro when he's on here. Hi. Did you hear some of the intro? Hi. Welcome, James.
Nice Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I was just doing a little intro about you, and which is not very little. You know, we've been friends for quite a while now, and I know your history and background as a writer, and you're an amazing writer. You just finished a book called Mastering the Logline, and I was reading that, and you worked in advertising for like Old Navy, S.C. Johnson, Princess Cruises, and your passion for human connection is evident in your film, and which you co-wrote, called feature film called Caged. It used to be called
The Shoe.
The Shoe, yeah.
Yeah, that's until the distributors got a hold of it.
I'm sorry?
That was called The Shoe up until the distributors, and they decided that they wanted to call it Caged because it seemed more marketable than SHU, which stands for Segregated Housing Unit. And it really is about a story about a psychiatrist who's wrongly convicted of killing his wife, and he finds himself in solitary confinement, and even someone with the kind of advanced mind of a doctor, can't survive the horror of solitary confinement, what the mind does to itself for not being able to communicate.
Yeah, that's I think one of the worst things that can happen to us. I was reading an article about 3 things that we need for survival, and I don't remember the other 2. I think it was cognitive, cognition, and one of the main ones was actually your femur, your thigh bones. Because isn't that weird? Yeah, because if you can walk yourself to meet friends and family, that's how you survive. I was like, wow, like that's how important our legs are, because we can be autonomous and
historically speaking, I guess so, yeah.
And I thought that was amazing. I thought that was
such
an interesting thing for survival. So I want to finish your, your little intro. It's actually pretty good. It's long, and it's basically just a few tidbits of what you've done so far. So Caged is now streaming for free on Amazon. So everybody go check it out. Let us know in the comments what you think. You also co-wrote the popular award-winning English language samurai short, Yae, Blind Samurai Woman. I saw that, and that was, oh my God, what an amazing film.
Yeah, the director, Akiko Izumatani, she is a member of my writers group we've been, in the same writers group for maybe 15 years. And this will go to one of the things I talk about is, the reputation and recommendation are 2 of the ways that a writer can get their stuff read. And that reputation starts with your peer group. And so when we were both, just learning how to write, we got into this writers group. And eventually we collaborated, and we just finished actually writing a feature version of this short film. So hopefully,
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can get the funding to make the film.
He's a great director too, so it helps to have talented friends.
Oh, definitely. So this is a show for all writers, inspiring writers, and even producers. If you want to get to know an amazing writer who has several scripts that are completed and ready to go, James is your man. So yeah, reach out to me if any of these stories resonate with you, and if you have funding, we're not ashamed to publicly ask for funding, because filmmakers always need money, you know.
Yeah,
And
there's two things that a successful film has in common. One is it got funding, and two, it has a good script, right?
yes,
Started out good anyway.
you start out with a good script, that's the beginning.
Yeah.
And then great funding makes it all happen, makes it possible. So that's what we're out here for. So I want to talk about your book. What made you go out and write a thick book about log lines? Because log lines, if anyone is new to screenwriting, is basically one or two sentences where you describe the entire movie within that one or two sentence.
And I like to make it a little bit more clear for people, because that seems like a lot. But if you focus on the central conflict, just the central conflict, then it becomes much easier to write a one sentence log line. Okay. So, yeah. What made me want to? So, about 10 years ago, I started on Facebook. They have a group called Loglines, and I was a regular contributor. And then I started learning more and more about log lines as I was helping other people. And then I realized that there's a real niche, right? For people, everyone needs to write a log line, but nobody's teaching how to write it. They have these ideas. They can't even identify what a log line is. Right. So I thought, well, maybe if I could write something that really defined it very well from the writer's perspective, then I could help other people, because I always loved helping other people. That was the whole reason I got into that logline group and became a moderator, was to help other people. So I started taking a deep dive. It's kind of funny that we're having this conversation today, because years ago I started, I had to take a break from politics. I was getting too crazy into it. I'm like, I just was wasting so much of my time and nobody was saying anything. So I thought, what better way to do it than to focus my energy into something very specific, and the thing that I'm passionate about, which is to help people tell stories. And so I started writing a book on collaboration. And I have this idea that if you can come up with the premise, the log line, and the thematic statement, or how the author sees the world through their story, then you really can get to onto the same page with your collaborators, right? If you can really define those three things. And the second chapter on log lines turned out to be getting longer and longer and longer. So I made the decision not to finish that book yet. I'll finish it eventually. But for now, I'm going to focus only on log lines, because log lines have a second benefit, which is this wonderful ability to analyze a story. If I see a log line that's not working, I can ask the question and really kind of figure out, before I've ever read the script, if there's a problem with the script. Because if the writer can't tell me what the answer is, maybe they don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So it has this, it's more than just describing the central conflict. It can really help a producer or a director or somebody other than the writer, or the writer themselves, I guess. It can help them to figure out what the story problems are. So, and then I had this idea, well, that a log line is sort of like an outline, and you don't need to have written the script in order to write a log line. In fact, if you come up with an idea or a premise, then if you write the log line, then you're really breaking down all the elements of a story that you need to have present in your script. So it can serve as a one sentence outline before you've ever written anything. That's my pitch for writing the log lines before you write. But the idea of writing the script, writing this book meant that I had to kind of get on the same page with my reader as well. And the problem that I have with people is that we all have different understandings of what words are. Like, for instance, the idea of a inciting incident, just to pick something out of the blue. The inciting incident, we all kind of understand an inciting incident gets the story started. But do you really know what an inciting incident is? And after deep contemplation and thinking about it for a really long time, I was able to break it down into two different things. One is the triggering events that change the status quo of the main character, and what I call the inciting epiphany, which is their awareness of the potential, or no, that maybe not even potential, but the negative consequences for not acting, right? So
the negative consequences on not acting,
for not acting, like, to fix their problem. The triggering events cause a problem.
Movie.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea, right? You have a central conflict, which is the problem starts with the triggering events. The character becomes aware of it, and then it's resolved in the climax, right? And everything happens in between are escalations or roadblocks. And finally, when the character runs out of options or runs out of time, the climax has to happen, and those negative consequences will happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of those things are kind of represented in the log line. And so I needed to spend, that's why it's so thick, it's not that thick, it's, I had to go through and really break down each of the elements of a story. And I identify 8 of them and really discuss them in a way that we can both get on the same page, right? So, so like for the main character, I don't call it a protagonist, because a protagonist to me is a very, very specific thing. It's a character who must act towards a goal, toward a desired outcome, and there is an antagonist who doesn't want them to have that, whatever it is their goal is, whether it's a thing or an object or a accomplishment or something. And
the roadblock.
the roadblock. The difference for me, the difference between an obstacle and a roadblock is an obstacle, just diverts your attention for a little bit. Whereas a roadblock, you've got to figure out that the main character has to kind of figure something out to get around it, right? It stops the story until they can figure out, until the main character can figure out something about themselves, maybe, or figuring something out about the plot or that, this or that. But when you run out of time or options, those negative consequences have to come in, like hard and fast. Mm-hmm. So that means I have to define what stakes are. The stakes are the negative consequences for failure to achieve their desired outcome. Now that sounds like a mouthful, but
give us an example of a popular movie. Like, so for the audiences who are new to this kind of thing, let's say, what movie is a popular big movie, like Mission Impossible,
So Mission
to action.
Right. So the thing is, I should kind of talk about the difference between a protagonist and a hero.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So a hero is a reactive character. The villain in that series, or in any series, when you have a hero and a villain, the hero is reactive to the villain's goal.
Okay.
So, in other words, the villain wants something, and the hero has to. Yes, they want something too. They want justice, or they want something like that. But that's not what's driving the story. The story is the narrative itself is being driven by the goal of the villain. And so the difference is the stakes are not for the hero like they are for the protagonist. The stakes for a hero are for, let's just say, society in general, right? They have this idea that that they have to protect somebody else, right? They may put their own life at risk, and yes, that's stakes, but that's not the narrative stakes. The narrative stakes are driven beyond their life. If the hero dies and the villain wins, the real stakes aren't that the hero dies. It's that other people are affected, right? The idea that so you want to those are the stakes that you'd want to have in the log line, not whether the hero lives or dies. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
Because like for
The
instance,
stakes is like it's tough. The stakes are pretty high up there with a film like that because it's like saving society, a mass group of people versus
or the universe, or it can be a single person, a loved one,
a single person too. Yeah.
It could be that they have to get to see. I mean, it doesn't even have to be life or death. They could be that they need to express some, they have to make amends with somebody. They have to tell the truth to somebody in order for them to live a fulfilled life, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be life or death. I know it's kind of hard to get into in a very brief form.
With the romance type films, comedy, it's not life or death. It's when a movie works, the difference between a good movie or a bad movie. I just had an interview a couple of weeks ago with David Zucker, who wrote Airplane, and he talked about this. He said, if you follow the idea of a great film, that it works, and you put the jokes where they need to go, then it works. So a film has a format, and that's what we're basically talking about. A lot of people, I feel like, a lot of people go to the movies and they see a movie and it's exciting, and maybe parts of it isn't as exciting as they thought it would, and they think they can write a movie. Oh, I could have done better. But, I was one of those people. And so I studied film since a very, very young age. And then by the time I graduated college, I took a class, an introduction to screenwriting. And that's when I realized I had no clue what I was talking about, because the format is extremely specific. Like, tell us about that. We have to outline. We have to, there's a first act, second and third act, and David explained it as, he says, his brother says, Jerry Zucker, he wrote Ghost and I believe directed it. And he said someone gets chased up a tree.
Yeah, that's a real basic version.
Break it down. Yeah.
Right. So, and my philosophy is slightly different. It's that a main character I call the 6 different types of main character. And I'll say the protagonist and the hero are the 2 most basic kind. But then I have a resistor character, like in Ghost, the character doesn't want to believe. And then I have a trailblazer character who they have already changed and the world has to change around them. And then there's observer characters. Those are the types of characters that are maybe narrators, like in Shawshank Redemption. That's the most famous one. Red is really the main POV character, and he's affected by a focus character, another character, Andy Dufresne. And so, and then of course the leader character, I call it a leader. It's the in an ensemble, there is usually one character who's the survivor character, and all of the other characters, some of them serve to show the stakes in a story. Some of them are, I believe every character in an ensemble should have a purpose, and the purpose should be illuminating to the main character and to the audience. So anyway, those 6 different types interact with an opposition character or an oppositional force. And each of those kinds of stories have slightly different structures. And each one of them, some people come in and they're like, everybody, all the screenwriting coaches don't like my script. And I read it and I go, actually, this is kind of brilliant. This follows this format, just like, Academy Award-winning movies that don't follow the 3-act structure to a T, because they don't need to, because they're not that kind of movie. They're not the basic kind of movie.
Right.
So what I try to do is illuminate all of those 6 different types of main characters, the 7 different types of opposition. I don't want to call them characters. There's three different types of opposition characters and 4 different types of oppositional forces. I'll be very brief. So you have an antagonist. An antagonist is the most basic kind. That's the character who is just opposed to the protagonist. They have no real goal other than to not let the protagonists achieve their goal. And then you have the villain who drives the narrative, like we talked about. They have a goal. They're not the protagonist, or they're not the main character. The difference between a villain and a main character is POV and stakes and many other things. But the 2 main things being so. Then there's the monster. The monster is, as a character, it doesn't have to be, body horror monster. It can be a sociopath, someone who is not affected by, they just move forward based on, I guess, the id, right? Basically, the idea of they don't have any goals.
Id, yeah.
Yeah, and then the 4 different types of the 4 different types of oppositional force. You've got culture, which is the most basic one. Every single coming of age story is the oppositional.
Greek wedding would be culture.
Sure. Yeah. Technology is a second one. I mean, we all think of Terminator as an example of oppositional force of technology, sort of a technological villain.
Yeah.
But it can be, the idea that the main character has to survive in a world where AI exists, for instance, right? That's going to be technology as an oppositional force.
Yes.
And then the 2 bigger ones that everyone is like really super familiar with is the oppositional force of nature. When you have a hurricane that comes in and destroys the town and you got to survive, or the Twisters was just the movie that just
Twister movie.
And then of course supernatural is anything that's not nature, that's like ghosts or aliens. No, aliens I guess could be technology, but anything that's
supernatural is there's a lot, like the horror films. Would that be supernatural, or Superman, that kind of thing?
So any horror most horror movies are either monster movies or supernatural. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're going to have a completely different structure than a protagonist would. Like in a horror movie, usually the audience understands through dramatic irony at the halfway point or midpoint what the weakness of the monster is. And so for the second half of the movie, we are engaged with hoping that the main character figures out what we already know, how to defeat the monster. Right. So that's not, you wouldn't use that structure with the protagonist. I mean, you might. I mean, I can think of examples, but so when anybody says there's one way to make a movie, I go, there's
many different ways. Yeah.
There's many different kinds. And as long as your puzzle pieces fit well together to make the movie, as a complete whole, you're okay with, having a passive main character, like in Kenneth Branagh's movie a couple years ago. They had the whole movie was that was the one that was set in Ireland during the Troubles. And
I don't know if I've seen that movie.
Oh, it's a wonderful. It's actually sort of a autobiography. It's about him as a child in why am I blanking on the name? Anyway, the whole story is told through this young boy's perspective. The whole movie. If there's a dialogue between 2 characters, we don't see it unless the boy sees it.
Hmm.
So it's beautiful. He's totally passive. He has nothing to do. I mean, he's just observing. And so those kinds of movies are valid movies as well.
Right.
So
There's several, yeah, you're right. And some European films, they don't feel like they have a structure, but they do. At the end, it makes sense. But when you're watching, it's like,
la
la la la la, it's kind of like day-to-day average incidents that are happening. But then
slice of
something,
life, yeah.
And something amazing
La
at the end.
Dolce Vita is one that when I first got into screenwriting, and I'm like, this doesn't follow any of the rules, and you're telling me there are all these rules. What about this one? And what about this one? And I'm like, every movie I looked at was like, it didn't conform to the rules that everybody was telling me I had to conform to, right? I'm like, no, wait. I want to give people the permission to not follow the basic form, but follow the structure that is required for the type of conflict that they are presenting.
True.
So understanding conflict is the most important thing.
So understanding conflict of what the writer is trying to portray.
Yeah, the central conflict of the story is, well, for me, I start with how do I want the audience to feel at the end of a movie? And that's going to define how the resolution of my central conflict. And then I want to make sure that my characters have enough stakes that the audience cares about what's happening. And so you can see I'm working backwards.
Yeah.
And then how do I set up those stakes in a way that are basically the resolution is a payoff for everything that I have to set up in the beginning.
Right.
So yeah, then what is absolutely necessary for the audience to understand, for the audience to understand what the conflict is from the perspective of the main character. Therefore, we have to know things like the status quo, the triggering events in a story, right? The triggering events don't have to be something that the main character is aware of. It has to be something the audience is aware of. It has to be necessary for the audience. If it's not necessary for the audience to know this information, it doesn't really belong in a script. Maybe it does in a novel, right?
Yeah.
And then the most important thing is the stakes. Absolutely 100%. If we don't care about, if for instance the main character doesn't care about what happens to him, or for stakes, there's no reason for us to care, the audience to care. So really, for me, there's nothing more important than stakes. But I have to understand why it's important for the character, right? And that's what the whole setup is about. That's what understanding the status quo is, and understanding what the character believes in, and all that stuff is, like there's an old axiom. Billy Wilder said, "If there's a problem in the third act, that's really a problem in the first act." So
it's in the beginning. You started. My dad always said that foundation is so important. Like he always described human beings or just anything, relationship, friendship, with having a good foundation, like a home. Like if you don't build a foundation right, after a while the house will topple down and kill everyone in it. And it's kind of like lying when you're new friends. If you lie in the beginning, then you've got to keep the lie going, and at some point the lie is going to come out, and maybe your friend will forgive you, maybe not. You're risking the loss of that. So writing is the same. Like we have to prime it in the first act. If you don't set it up, and I feel like character, I spend a lot of time doing the character bios. I found like once one of my movies didn't work because I hadn't done enough work on one of the characters. Like what are the stakes for this character? If we don't know the person's, and with characters, sometimes we write things that never end up in the movie, and that's what makes the character interesting. Like one of my characters I had that, for example, I'm just making this up. For example, we have that they were abused as a child, but it never comes up in the movie. but there is a slight anger or a slight twitch that they have that is unexplained. And I found that they say that's usually what makes the film, when the person has a tick or something interesting. I'm trying to think of a movie that happened. The character got the job because he was limping. I'm trying to think. It was like Medicine Woman or something. The doctor, I think he had a limp throughout the whole movie. And the reason he got the part was because the director said he was the only one who walked in with a limp. The actor didn't have a limp.
Are you talking about House,
doctor,
the TV show?
Huh?
Are you talking about House, the TV show with Hugh Laurie?
I think so. Was it that
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, he doesn't have a limp, and he doesn't have an American accent either.
Right. I believe he got the job. The director said he walked in with a limp and he liked it. And the director said, okay, you're hired. And because everybody was good. All the actors that came in were good, but he
was
had
memorable.
extra, that would made him memorable. So it's interesting to watch a doctor. He's helping others heal, but he himself has a limp, has a leg issue. So it's kind of ironic, kind of interesting. So there's a lot of things that go into the film, into a film that people don't know. And I always say that, like what you said about the collaboration, that you even wanted to write a movie about it, the collaboration. One of the things I believe, like in the film industry, is buddies working together, and they don't let anyone in. So the newcomers always complain that they don't let anyone in. And let me tell you why. And as a newcomer, I didn't like it. But then I understood it. The more I studied film, and I went to Pepperdine, got my degree in screenwriting, and then I did work quite a bit in different production companies. And one of the things I learned, the team is so important. One person doesn't carry out their duty, the whole thing falls apart. So that's why people work with people that they trust.
That's it. Trust is the right word. It's not that they're closed off. It's that they can trust this person, and
they know they can pull their weight. They know that they can.
This is really coming true in my real life.
Right. It's kind of like real life. Yeah. You work with the people you like. It's because they're going to impact the movie directly and indirectly.
Yeah, we had a couple questions about the book, and I wanted to kind of clarify.
Let's get into the questions. We have some audience questions, so let's see.
I wanted to say this book is about screenwriting, but it really is about writing you know what? If you are anyone who needs to tell a story, understanding who your audience is and what their expectations are, and how to best describe what it is you're trying to tell, right? In screenwriting, it's central conflict, but understanding all the different elements will help you to clarify your thoughts down to a very brief, I say 1 or 2 sentences. And the reason for that is because your audience doesn't really have the capacity to listen to you go on and on and on for half an hour about a story and then finally get to the point, right? Get to the point and then allow them to ask you to go further into it, right? So this is not just for screenwriting, even though it's how to excite Hollywood in a single sentence. It's for any kind of writing.
So I had another question. Someone's asked, how do you come up with your ideas? Because, one of the things we haven't talked about is the fact that you have several scripts. How many scripts do you have now? That the last time I talked to you was 7 or more.
It's like 15 or something like that. But let's be honest, most of them are never going to see the light of day. It's fine.
But I've read some of them and they're very good.
I have 3 that are in pre-production
right now, correct?
I'm sorry?
You have one, Journey to Now is in pre-production.
Yeah, and
where is that?
It's going to be shot in Washington, D.C. and Georgia. So, in South Carolina, there's a flashbacks to Vietnam. So,
that's the alcohol, based on the alcoholic.
Yeah.
I read that. Well, that's a really good one.
Yeah, and it just keeps getting better now that I'm collaborating with the director, and so we have a female director on this project. Actually,
Thank
the producer
God.
I'm working with is the producer I'm working with is the president of Women in Film in the Carolinas. and she
Okay.
has a mandate to give voice to the underrepresented. And so she loves my writing, but she wants to have female directors, and I'm all on board for that.
Sure.
And so we have 3 projects that are in various stages of development. And
Yay.
yeah, and all 3 of them have female directors.
I
And
want to tell you a fact, the sad fact.
yeah,
There are only 4% female directors in America. And can I tell you something about Iran? Did you know that in Iran, there are 50% female directors? As
yeah,
backward as that country is,
yeah,
honestly, when it comes to film, there's a lot of women involved in writing,
yeah.
directing. I was shocked. It's the only, actually, did you know it's the only country in the world with that many female directors?
Well,
Half
I think that there's the problem here, if I could be blunt, is that there are lots of female directors that get one chance. Just like, like if you go to like Sundance or places, film festivals, you'll see a lot of mix of male and female directors. And then the female director doesn't get the second chance to make the bigger movie, where the male directors seem to. And I don't understand that, except for I can think of one thing, and that is um, the stories that women like and the stories that men like are different.
right.
Therefore, the distribution companies that are aiming towards male audiences, generally speaking, they produce more work because the stories that women like are great stories and tend to be, you know,
Less action oriented.
less marketable. Let's put it that way, right? Marketable. I hate that word, but because I'm in advertising, so. But the
Yeah.
idea is that if there were more women in distribution,
Oh.
then more of the stories that they want to see might get greenlit,
So
right?
you solved the puzzle. We
I didn't
need more
solve the.
women in distribution.
I'm shining a light on it. I'm not saying that that could actually be true, but I hope it could be true. And
I
so
hope
I
so.
really want to see,
I
like,
think it's culture. I have a different take. My take is that it's cultural. I feel like, because when I studied the history of screenwriting, most writers were female in the beginning
in
because they were
in the
not,
very early days when there was no money in it. Yeah.
yes, when they weren't paid well.
Yeah.
When they started getting paid, the men came in and shooed the women away. So
Mhm.
screenwriters that get paid really well are usually female. Also directing. There's a lot of female directors. Also
Mhm.
directing became a thing,
Mhm.
and then men took over in the
Yeah.
US. And I feel like it's like a bullying situation. In Iran, the difference is they don't get paid well. So gender doesn't really play a role
Sure.
because
Mm.
the box office is not like here. Their films, even though they're winning a lot in Sundance and they win a lot of European film festivals, but they're not where like American high stakes type like
Right.
superhero type films that get
Right.
hundreds of millions of dollars of production. So I believe because finances aren't a thing in Iran, and I think that's why it's equal.
Yeah.
So men and women both have the same avenues, the same routes to pursue their goals as a writer, as a director. And I think that's where it comes down, in my opinion.
Right. So someone asked about writing from life experience, and I have a really, I think, an interesting take on that. And I want to share it with you.
Okay, go ahead.
And
Yeah.
then one of the first things I told you is that that about collaboration is being on the same page with regard to premise and logline and thematic statement. And I refer to that as how you, the author, sees the world. You're telling the story through your eyes, right? So we need to understand why you, as an individual, uh, are the only person to write this story because it's your unique perspective on this story. And so when you're collaborating, that's more than one person with more than one perspective, right? So
Yes.
you have to come to an agreement on what it means. Like, for instance, Journey to Now is about forgiveness. It's a
Yes.
single word, right? But it really compels, it really is referenced in every decision that I make about what every scene is about, what every character is about, is about that theme of forgiveness. So life experience is right there with that. It's like, I'm not an alcoholic Vietnam vet. Hello, let me see if I'll just finish the story and maybe she'll connect with us again.
Yes, just continue with the story while we wait for Anahita to join us again.
Sure. So I'm not an alcoholic and I'm not a Vietnam vet. And therefore, that's not my life experience. But my life experience is having dealt with someone who was an alcoholic Vietnam vet. And so from a perspective, I do have a voice, I do have an understanding of it, and life experience does play a part in it. But in order for me to express a story, I don't need to have lived that experience. I wrote a script, a really fun script about terraforming Mars. It's called Eden 2.0, right? Because Eden, the Garden of Eden, and it's a really wonderful story. But I've never been to Mars, right? So that's not my life experience. How can I write about that? How can I write about a cardinal who's the main character?
Because you've never been a cardinal.
Never been a cardinal, but
research.
I mean, but I understand the idea of human connection, right? This is what all my story is about. If I had to say my voice, I like that my voice is a flawed individual searching for human connection. That's who I am, right? So if we're talking about life experience, that's what I'm writing from, not from the actual things, not from being a screenwriter, or not from being an advertiser or a father of four or what have you. I'm writing from that flawed perspective. I'm a flawed individual searching for human connection. So yeah, that's I think a commonality between everything I've ever written. And I really do feel like anybody can become a writer. It's not just yes, there's some natural talent to it, but really it's about absorbing as much information as you can. I didn't realize just how many movies I had watched and how many stories that I knew about, that when I started studying about storytelling, I'm like, I had all of this history to draw from. And, so yes, this book is, hello again.
Hi.
This book is directed towards screenwriters to tell the stories that they want to tell. And I think anybody can do that. And I think the more you learn, the better you get at that, the more feedback you get from other people, the more you can learn how to express those ideas that you have, that you want to. But it starts with this idea of, who you are as a writer. And Anahita, when you really identify, who you are as a writer, and that starts reflecting in everything you do, including Anahita TV.
True. This is a platform basically to showcase what we can do here. Collaborate with people who are in the same business and hear the best advice that we can help others give to others. I'm like you, I love collaborating. We did write something together, but unfortunately we didn't get to finish it. We did start, it was a good story during the pandemic.
I try to help because a lot of people, life gets in the way, and that's okay. And so although these three things that are in pre-production are stuff that I did by myself, Yaye is a collaboration. Yaye, Blind Samurai Woman, the short film, the Caged was a collaboration, and then there are other collaborations. I'm working with another. I'm Rahela Kamali. I don't know if I told you about her.
You did tell me about her. She's in Europe, Rahela?
Yeah, she's in Europe and she's making films in Spain, but she's of Persian descent. She was born in Tehran.
like me.
And yeah, and so she came to the United States to study at UCLA, and we connected through a writers group, the storyboard group that met on the Fox lot back in the day.
Right.
Now it meets via Zoom, but we connected, and I love this idea of collaborating with her for because she has a completely different perspective on everything, especially
Then you.
than women characters, first of all.
Okay.
So collaborating with her meant trying to understand that character, female characters better, right? It
From her
challenged
point of
me.
view. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we came up with a story, but she turned it into a short film in Swedish. And so I have a producer credit on that. It's coming out soon. It's going to be in film festivals soon, I think in 2025.
Wow.
So, and it turned out fantastic because I challenged her, right?
Yeah.
And she challenged me, and together we plowed forward into this story that was, I think, accessible and a really brutal look at what it means to be in a relationship for a really long time and being bored with it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So those are the kinds of stories she wants to tell.
Okay. So like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's her point of view, and I feel like she's probably had experiences with relatives or someone that was
Oh yeah.
in that situation, and that's what propels her to tell the truth, the truth of that side of, we all want long-term relationship, but then, at what point does it get stale? One thing I wanted to talk about.
Oh no. Should I anticipate what she's going to ask and bring it back to log lines?
I'm going to anticipate she would like your closing thoughts on everything before we wrap up the show.
Timing just went so fast. I love it. So I want to talk about I'm going to just name the 8 elements and say that and then define the log line. So the 8 elements are context and setting, the main character, opposition, the trigger, which includes the inciting epiphany, the goal, the stakes, the flaw or description of the main character, and the tone, right? And so if I were to define the log line, I would say a log line is a single sentence of about 35 words that defines the story's central conflict through those elements: the context and setting, flawed main character, opposition, triggering events, goal, stakes, and tone. And the purpose of the log line is really, really simple. It's to encourage the industry professional to read the actual pages. And those there are 4 different elements or 4 different promises that get any script read. Any script or manuscript, doesn't matter. And that is the reputation of the writer, the recommendation of the writer, like someone like an agent or a manager, their whole sole purpose is to recommend a writer, right? And the recommendation applies to anyone, right? The dentist can read your script and pass it on to their friend. The reputation, that starts with every person you talk with, every interaction that you have within the industry or not within the industry, because you really want to be the person that people want to work with. Like Anahita and I were talking about, be the person that they trust to tell a good story. And then the premise is the promise of conflict. There's no details of the conflict. It's just a good idea. And that gets the mouth watering, right? It's like, ooh, I got to read this script. And then, of course, the 4th one is the log line. And the log line, it's got to be something that's intriguing, but it has to be kind of almost factual, because you're setting the expectations of the reader, right? With this log line, the reader knows almost everything, not everything, but almost everything they need to know about the conflict, so they can focus on whether you're telling your when they're actually reading your script, they can tell whether you're telling it well or not.
Yeah.
Because they already know what the central conflict is. They may not know what the resolution of that conflict is. They may not know what if they get their goal or they don't. But yeah.
Yeah. So give us an example of a log line before we say goodbye. What was the log line for your movie Caged?
Oh, I don't have that one saved.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay. So log lines are subjective, first of all. So I'm going to start with what I think is the best comedy of all time. Right? And that is the 1960 Academy Award winner for Best Picture called The Apartment, written by Billy Wilder.
Yes, I love that movie.
Okay. See if this log line conjures images in your mind.
Right.
Okay. An amiable accountant who fancies a lively elevator operator reluctantly lends his Manhattan apartment to his boss for an extramarital affair with the same girl. But when she downs a bottle of pills, the employee must step in and save her.
Wow.
So
okay.
The question is she saved, right?
Yeah. But that's intriguing to, there's a lot that happens. This is a great movie,
Yeah.
It's a wonderful movie. I love it. With
let's see,
is it Jack Lemmon?
I'm sorry?
The lead character, Jack Lemmon, is it?
Yeah, Jack Lemmon, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love his movies. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and all your knowledge. And if anyone's watching who's a producer interested in any of James's films, I can vouch for him. I've read quite a few of them.
Thank you.
Contact me. I would love to produce. We've always talked about that.
Executive producing.
I'll bring in the money and produce one of your films or some of them.
So yeah, if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more without having to buy the book, if you want to buy the book, it's available on Amazon.
They should buy the book. The book is on Amazon. It's called Mastering the Log Line. And I would go and watch Caged and leave comments, please. As all artists, they need following and your help and your, contribution by watching and, buying his books. You are giving an artist, a leg up and getting him to continue being his best self and producing more art. So thank you so much, James.
Thank you so much, Anahita.
Yeah, you're welcome. Talk to you soon. Stay on. We're going to talk to Rebel.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.